Okay, today we're going to look at adding and subtracting unlike fractions. This is the fun stuff. Takes a little bit of everything that we've learned so far in fractions and combines it so that we can add them together. So first, I want you to think back to chapter 8 when we compared fractions. Whenever we went to compare fractions, we had to get them to have common denominators. So that's one of our first vocabulary words for this, just to remind you from chapter 8. Common denominators. You have to find a common denominator to compare them, to add them, or to subtract them. So first we want to look at common denominators. Next we'll look at what we learned with like fractions, so the adding or the subtracting, either way, just looking at doing that across the top on the numerators. And we'll put all of that together to add these fractions. Okay, so let's look at our first example. 1/5 plus 7/10. First, we have to go back to what we know about finding a common factor. So first thing we're going to do is look at our common denominator, We have to find a common denominator. So if I look at these numbers and go way back to when we talked about our LCM, our least common multiples, I need to see what do 5 and 10 have in common. So I can look first and say, well, I start with, and I have 5, 10, 15, and I can already ... because 10 is obviously there. So the least common multiple for 5 and 10 is going to be 10. Hopefully you remember this from chapter 8. So if I want both denominators to be 10, I can say, well, this one already is 10, so it's good to go. So I'll just go ahead and rewrite it because it's good to go. Now 1/5, I have to do something with that one. That one's not good to go. So I have to say, well, I want my bottom to be 10. What do I have to do to 5 to get it to 10? I have to multiply by 2. And our lovely, lovely phrase, whatever I do to the bottom, I've got to do to the top. So I'm going to multiply the top by 2. This gets me to have 5 times 2 is 10, which is already on the bottom. And then 1 times 2 is 2. Now I have like fractions, which is what we did before. So now all I have to do is add across. My denominator stays the same, so I have 10. And my 2 plus 7 is 9. I have to think if I can reduce that. Is there any factors that go into 9 and a 10? No, they don't have any. So my final answer would be 9/10. Okay, so it's just kind of an extra step where you have to put them both into common denominators before you can add them. Let's look at another one. Let's look this time at 1/3 and 1/4. Okay, I'm going to start off with my LCMs, figure out what they have in common, their least common multiple. So I have 3 and 4, since those are my denominators. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I'm going to ... see if I have anything in common already. 8, 12, oh, there it is. So they both have 12 in common. So I know that my denominator is going to want to be 12. So I'm going to rewrite these with 12 on the bottom. Now the last one, we only had to change 1. We only had to change the one with the 5th. But now this one, neither of these have a 12 on bottom, so we're going to have to change both of them. Let's start off over here. What do I have to do to get 3 to be 12? I have to multiply it by 4. And whatever I do to the bottom, I have to do to the top. So multiply the top by 4. 3 times 4 is 12. 1 times 4 is 4. Now moving over to this one, what do I have to do to 4 to get it to be 12? I have to multiply it by 3. And whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. So I end up with 4 times 3 is 12, and 1 times 3 is 3. Now, I get to just simply add across like normal. So 12 stay the same. I want my denominator always stay the same. And then I have 4 plus 3, which is 7. Now I check and see, is there anything that'll go into 7 and 12? No, so that would be my final answer. On to subtracting. It's the same basic idea, only this time we're subtracting. So if I have 5/12 minus 1/4, I can't just subtract across. I have to have common denominators. So I'm going to figure out what they have. Now, if we remember back from the last problem we just did, what they're going to have in common, the first thing would be 12. So this one's going to get to stay the same. I'm not changing anything on it. But this one, I want a denominator of 12. So I have to figure out, well, what do I do to 4 to get to 12? I times 3. So I have to times 3 on the top. And I get 3/12. I'm going to subtract those because that's what it's telling me up here. Don't accidentally do the wrong one. My denominators stay the same, so 12. And then I just subtract the top. 5 minus 3 is 2. Okay, I'm going to pause. I'm going to see, is there anything that can go into these? Ooh, 2. They have the common factor, the greatest common factor of 2. So I'm going to have to simplify this. Divide the top by 2. Divide the bottom by 2. So I end up with a lovely fraction of 1/6. So same type of story for adding and subtracting with the unlike denominators. The biggest thing you have to remember is step 1, find common denominators. Step 2, make the numerators match those common denominators. And step 3, you either add or subtract across, same as what we've been doing.